in the vast desert, under the burning sun, and the endless expanse of sand, a story was unfolding that would forever mark the history of faith and divine deliverance. The people of Israel, freshly released from centuries of slavery in Egypt, were marching toward a promise that sounded almost too good to be true. A land flowing with milk and honey, a land given by God Himself to their fathers Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Yet before they could step into that promise, they would face one of the most terrifying and impossible moments of their journey. A moment where every human option was cut off, and only the hand of God could make a way. This is the story of the crossing of the Red Sea, where God proved once again that He opens paths where none exist. The book of Exodus tells us how it all began. After 10 devastating plagues that shook the mighty empire of Egypt, Pharaoh finally released the Israelites. The power of God had broken the pride of the most powerful man on earth. Families who had known nothing but oppression now walked free, carrying with them the wealth of Egypt, given by their former masters in fear. More than 600,000 men, besides women, children, and animals, were moving together in an extraordinary exodus. Imagine the sight. A massive sea of people stretching as far as the eye could see, united under the leadership of Moses, the man chosen by God. But freedom was not without its challenges. God did not lead them through the shortest route, which would have been the way of the Philistines along the coast. Instead, He led them into the wilderness, by the way of the Red Sea. Why? Because God knew their hearts. If the people faced war so soon, they might turn back to Egypt. So He led them on a longer, stranger path, one that seemed illogical, yet divinely orchestrated. This detail reminds us that sometimes God leads us in ways we do not understand, because His purpose is not only to deliver us, but to transform us. As they journeyed, something extraordinary happened. The presence of God Himself went with them in visible form. By day, a pillar of cloud rose above them, giving shade in the desert and showing them the way. By night, the cloud turned into a pillar of fire, lighting their path and filling them with awe. Think about that for a moment. An entire nation guided not by maps or compasses, but by the living God, revealing Himself in fire and cloud. It was a daily reminder that they were not alone. Yet Pharaoh's heart, true to the warnings given by God, hardened once more. He regretted letting the Israelites go. How could Egypt lose its slave labor force, the very backbone of its economy? Fueled by anger and pride, Pharaoh summoned his army. The Bible describes this army in detail. 600 of the best chariots, along with all the other chariots of Egypt, each commanded by officers. Egyptian chariots were the tanks of the ancient world, fast, deadly, and nearly impossible to escape from on foot. It was the most terrifying military force of its time, and they were coming for Israel. The Israelites found themselves trapped. Before them stretched the Red Sea, a vast body of water impossible to cross. Behind them thundered the chariots of Pharaoh, dust rising from the desert as the army closed in. It was the perfect trap, humanly speaking. No escape forward, no retreat backward. Panic swept through the camp. The people cried out to Moses in fear, saying, "Was it because there were no graves in Egypt that you brought us to die in the wilderness? We told you to leave us alone, to let us serve the Egyptians." Fear makes people forget quickly. The same God who had devastated Egypt with plagues now seemed distant to them in this moment of crisis. Moses, however, stood firm. He answered the people with words that still echo through history. "Do not be afraid. Stand firm, and you will see the deliverance the Lord will bring you today. The Egyptians you see today, you will never see again. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still." These were not empty words of encouragement. They were a prophetic declaration of what God was about to do. Then came the turning point. God told Moses to stretch out his staff over the sea. That same staff had struck the Nile and turned its waters to blood, had been raised over Egypt in signs and wonders, and now it would be the instrument of deliverance once more. The angel of God, who had been leading the Israelites, moved behind them. The pillar of cloud shifted its position, standing between the camp of Israel and the Egyptian army. On one side, it brought darkness and confusion to the Egyptians. On the other, it gave light to the Israelites all night long. Imagine that scene. The same cloud serving two purposes at once. Judgment to one side, salvation to the other. During the night, God drove back the sea with a strong east wind. All through the night, the waters parted, and dry land appeared. The sea became like two massive walls of water, rising on the left and on the right, while the ground between them turned into a path. Scientists have long debated how this could have happened. Some suggest natural wind set-downs. Others point to unusual tide spots. None of these explanations capture the true miracle described in Scripture. The text is clear. God himself opened the sea. And in that moment, the impossible became possible. The Israelites began their crossing. Imagine walking with your family, your children holding your hands, the elderly leaning on their staffs, flocks of sheep bleating nervously, while towering walls of water loomed beside you. The sound of the wind filled the air, and the ground beneath your feet was dry, where once there had been nothing but deep water. Step by step, the nation moved forward, not by their own strength, but by the supernatural intervention of God. Pharaoh's army, blinded by rage, pursued them into the sea. The Egyptians drove their chariots onto the seabed, but suddenly the tide turned. The Lord looked down on the Egyptian army through the pillar of fire and cloud, and threw them into confusion. Their chariot wheels jammed, making it difficult to move. The Egyptians realized too late what was happening. They cried out, "Let us flee from the Israelites. The Lord is fighting for them against Egypt." But there was no escape. When the last Israelite had crossed, God commanded Moses once more, "Stretch out your hand over the sea." As Moses obeyed, the waters returned to their place with tremendous force. The walls of water collapsed, crashing down upon Pharaoh's army. Chariots, horses, and soldiers were swallowed by the sea. Not one of them survived. The mightiest military power of the ancient world was destroyed in a single night. Not by human weapons, but by the hand of the living God. On the other side, safe on dry land, the Israelites watched as the waters closed behind them. They saw with their own eyes the bodies of the Egyptians washed up on the shore. Fear and awe gripped their hearts. But it was no longer the fear of Pharaoh. It was the fear of the Lord. They realized in that moment that the God who had delivered them was greater than any enemy, greater than any obstacle, greater than the sea itself. And they believed in the Lord and in his servant Moses. Then came a moment of celebration that has echoed through the ages. Moses and the people of Israel sang a song to the Lord, the first recorded song of praise in Scripture. It was a victory anthem, declaring, "The Lord is my strength and my song. He has given me victory. The Lord is a warrior. The Lord is his name." Miriam, the sister of Moses, took a tambourine in her hand, and all the women followed her with tambourines and dancing, celebrating the God who had delivered them. This was not just music. It was worship born from the deepest gratitude, a response to the miracle they had just witnessed. The crossing of the Red Sea is more than an ancient story. It is a living testimony of God's power to make a way when there is no way. For generations, it has stood as a symbol of salvation. The waters of the sea became a dividing line between bondage and freedom, between death and life. In the New Testament, the Apostle Paul would later write that Israel's passing through the sea was like a baptism, a symbol of leaving behind the old life and stepping into the new by the power of God. Even today, the lessons of the Red Sea resonate. We all face moments when the way forward seems blocked, when the enemy is closing in behind us, when fear whispers that we are doomed. Yet the story reminds us that the God who parted the sea is still the same. He has not changed. He is able to open paths where none exist, to turn impossible situations into testimonies of his glory. Some have tried to explain away the miracle with natural theories. Perhaps the sea was shallow, or the wind blew in just the right way. But such explanations only diminish the power of the account. The Bible emphasizes that this was not coincidence, but divine intervention. The waters became walls, the ground was dry, and the timing was perfect. Nature does not move at the exact command of a man stretching out his staff, lest the creator of nature himself commands it. The geography of the crossing has also fascinated scholars for centuries. Was it the Gulf of Suez, the Gulf of Aqaba, or another body of water now lost to history? While theories abound, the exact location remains uncertain. And perhaps that is intentional. The power of the story does not lie in pinpointing a spot on the map, but in recognizing the God who worked the miracle. The Egyptians were known for their powerful armies, their advanced chariotry, and their military dominance. Yet all their might crumbled before the God of Israel. This was not just about freeing slaves. It was about declaring to the world that the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob is the Lord over all nations, stronger than the gods of Egypt, stronger than Pharaoh himself. When the sea closed and silence fell over the waters, a new chapter began for Israel. They were no longer just a crowd of former slaves. They were now a nation, forged by God's power, walking under his covenant, destined for his promises. The crossing of the Red Sea was their defining moment, the day they truly became a people of faith. And so the story lives on, not just as history, but as hope. Whenever we feel trapped between the impossible and the overwhelming, We can look back to that night by the sea and remember, the Lord is still able to fight for his people. He is still the God who makes a way where there is no way.